Right, so here is the final, possibly, no, here's definitely the final video on this rather arduous map making process. And now we are coming to combine all of our maps together. We're going to link them all together. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get rid of this blue background. So I'm going to select the layer that I'm working. I'm going to press Control and J, that's on PC. On Macintosh, I think, or on Apple, you would press Control Shift Function key 0 pad 1 and then PCP all at the same time, and then that will actually copy the file for you. I'm being obnoxious. All right, so I'm going to get rid of this layer here, just delete it. So now we don't have a background anymore, which is fantastic. I'm going to select my magic marker tool here. Select the blue area. I've got tolerance of 30. Now this determines, of course, how much of a similar color it will select. And I've got it on to 50 now, and I'm just looking at my edges. That's pretty much everything except for one or two little pieces. So let's push it up to 70 and just see what we get. Yes, all right, that's nice and clean. We're not losing it. We are losing something down there. All right, and we're losing something in there. So 70 is too much, 65. And by losing, I mean we're getting those outlines going into our mountain range, which is what we don't want. So let's take it down even further. 62. All right, good. That mountain is safe. Okay, 62 seems to be our good layer. So I'm going to press Control C again. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to come over here to our deepest layer, and I'm going to press Control V. And of course, I copied the wrong way around, didn't I? I was being too smart about Macintosh. So Control Shift I inverts the mask. Control C now takes that project, that file, copy, paste, so it's there. It's a bit of a mess at the moment, but that's what we've got to do. We've just got to start off at that point. So we can now delete that. No, we don't want to save it. We come to our second map, which we made. Control J again to duplicate, to delete the bottom layer. You don't have to actually delete it. I just do it out of habit. All right, and then we're going to use our same mask tool. Just check that we haven't lost any mountains. We shouldn't have, because of the way that Incarnate makes these maps. We've got to Control Shift I to invert the mask selection. Control C, come over here, Control V, and then we can close that. Great, we don't need to save it. Okay, so there's our layers. I'm going to move it around a bit. So we've got layer 1 at the top, layer 2 at the bottom, layer 2 in the middle, and then layer 3 right at the bottom. And I'm actually going to rename them. So we have the solar sphere, we have the terrasphere, and then underneath I'm going to select that layer, Control J it, so I can get rid of this background, delete that background, and I'm going to call this the undersphere. And the undersphere, we have to get rid of this blue as well, because it's not sitting on a puddle of blue water, is it? This one could be tricky because the blue is very similar to our mountain ranges, but I don't see any problems. No, good, so it's gone. And now I can turn these other layers on, so we can see that yes, there's definitely, as the map is drawn at this exact moment where the mountains and things are aligning, there are definitely big areas that just punctuate with color and with light from the surface. But imagine that what's actually happening is this is drifting this way, this is rotating, and we're not, it's sort of moving around in a unique pattern, and it's not because of Brownian movement. I'm going to use that as my excuse. Because of Brownian movement, it's not moving in the same direction all the time, so it's not geosynchronous is what I'm getting at. It's more like clouds that sort of drift and move. So that's moving this way, this is moving that way. So arguably where you have gaps, those gaps are going to get covered over at some point by movement of layers above and so on. Now this is not a map that I could give to a player. I mean, this is complete and utter chaos, isn't it? You can't see what's going on. You get this sort of very crazy idea sort of forming. What I did want to do though was I wanted to have them all here, so that when I put the text on, I can make sure that the text is all the right size, and it also really helps me to visualize what this world is like. So if I come down here, I'm going to create a new layer, and we're going to put it right at the bottom, and I'm going to fill it with black. Look at that. So that is how our world will generally look. Well, we said there was going to be sort of an aurora borealis happening in the background, didn't we? This idea of this central stone. So I'm going to do a very rough option here, using a very old sort of trick. Let's do a sort of a spiraling arm out that way, a spiraling arm out that way. I know that's not exactly how the Aurora Borealis works, but for the purposes of this demonstration, it'll be absolutely fine. I've set the brush very specifically to being 47% opacity, so that as I'm going over, I'm getting these layers. Let me hide these layers so you can see. So as I'm going over it, I get patches of light and dark, and what that helps to do is to create a sense of depth, to create a sense of well, basically a sense of depth to the whole image. And when I go with green now, I don't know why I'm saying that this is what the Aurora Borealis looks like, but it's what it does look like in my head when I sort of think about it. Is something that looks perhaps like this, where we've got these flashes of color. I'm going to get some purple. Might as well just use all the colors, right? And we'll just highlight some of that green with purple, blending it in, creating this vortex that those vortex priests worship. I'm just sort of getting rid of the black as best I can. I think we need some blue in there. I feel like we need some blue. But now, to get those tendrils to really pop out, I'm going to change the size of my brush so I can do something. And this is just rough anyway. I mean, this is just to show us what that world might look like. Again, keeping that layering going so that we get these moments of highlights. And then I'm just going to take the whole thing and I'm going to go filter, blur, and I'm going to use a radial blur and just say best quality, and yeah, let's make it spin, and we're going to do something like this. Let's see what this looks like. Right, okay, good enough for me. And now we can turn everything else back on again, and that perhaps is an idea of what we're getting. Now, what you've also got to bear in mind is that this is a flattened map. So when we would turn it into a sphere, you would be seeing the underside on the opposite side of this floating bubble. You would see the reverse. You'd see the underside of the other continents on the other side. So it creates a very weird space, right? A very strange kind of space. And like I said, this map is completely unusable for our purposes. So what we need to decide upon is what is going to be our base underlying color for each of the layers. So what is going to be between these continents? And I think perhaps the best idea would be to go with a sort of a neutral gray. Perhaps this is just an idea, although that does look like water, doesn't it? So neutral grey is not a good idea, or sort of a Prussian blue. What if we went with something like this, so that it's definitely not it's definitely not swamp, it's definitely not water. I'm just worried about legibility of the land masses. I want them to be able to sort of pop out so we can see them quite clearly. And this is oftentimes what I will spend a lot of time doing, is just trying to work out how do I best mount it so we can get a sense of it. That's not bad. I do have a trick which I'm going to try. Let's see. Alright, so in this folder, this is a secret project which hopefully is going to be coming out soon. Where is this? There we go. Before you get to see too much of what was going on there, I've got this piece of parchment paper which I think is going to solve our problems. So if I do that, if I do that, if I do that, I don't have a problem with that. I do think it's a bit bright in comparison to the land masses, so I can just now drop it over the grey to tone it down so that our world still sticks out and is still visible. What I might also do I'm going to use this one, is come into my blending options and see what happens if I give it a stroke. Does that make it absolutely awful? I'm not sold on it, but maybe it should be black. Maybe it shouldn't be black. Maybe it should be a dark brown. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with that. But a little too outline, which is slightly darker. Somewhere there. Ah, now that I think I can live with. All right. So this layer certainly gets approval. Copy the layer style, turn this layer on, which is already popping out, paste it, not a problem. Now, also not a problem, and it sticks out for me. That works, in my opinion, that works quite well. So now it's a case of labeling these areas, well, as best we can. Even just doing that, I think, has given a little bit more clarity. We still don't get exactly the idea of what's going on. But having done this, I now have an idea for how we can truly make this an interesting space. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two and I'm going to convert them together. And then... and I'm not going crazy. You'll see here what I'm going to do now. I'm now going to blur them. I'm doing the right ones. Yes, I am. All right, so I'm now going to blur them quite heavily. And if I hide those two, does that work? Does that sort of give us a sense of the other plates underneath drifting by slowly? It could. Or maybe you think I'm talking complete rubbish. Just to give a sense of the fact that there are other continents underneath. So then we would do that for each layer. I think I could live with that. I don't think that that's absolutely awful. I actually quite like that. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to go and do labeling, which is awfully boring. The idea here, of course, is that we've got elves versus orcs. The orcs are fairly nomadic, raiders, territorial land grabbers, that kind of thing. The elves are gold shifters, also nomadic, but the cities that survive here are going to be harsh and difficult environments within which to flourish. Culturally, I think the elves can't really be our traditional grey elves. They can't have those wonderful names that Tolkien gave us. So I think we're going to have to look somewhere else. We're going to have to look to a different culture to draw our inspiration from. And I usually will decide upon elves being a certain this or a certain that. And I think, and this is just because of the desert, I don't want to have elves that are Egyptian, because that's in another setting of mine. The elves are Egyptian, and I'm trying to move away from that. So I think the elves here could be, the naming conventions anyway, could be a little more Arabian, a little perhaps Persian as well in their approach. So there's that sort of sense of the desert and that kind of thing, without that wonderful sense of opulence that the Egyptians had. So I think that's what I'm going to go with. So right, now it's just a case of zooming in. Control plus gets you to zoom in. Space bar gives you the little hand so you can move around without moving your picture around, and it's a case of putting in those names. So let's see what font we've got loaded up here. So this is an outpost. We're going to call the outposts Sul, and we're going to call the main cities Men, I think, would be a good one. So this will be Sal Dracum. Saldracum. Saldrum. Saldrum. Salaxadrum. I think I like that. All right, obviously clearly the wrong font size. We're going to bring this all the way down to, let's say, 50. 50 might even be too big. So we've got 50 there. Salaxadrum. 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 Right, font style. I have a few fonts loaded that I quite like. That might be too thin, perhaps. That's not very nice. This is quite a nice one. Yeah, I think we'll go with that one. I can do titling in Incarnates, but for me, it's better to do it here. I've got more control, I feel anyway, over the fonts. And how the fonts are used and mixed together. All right, so this is Salaxadrum, and I don't know if we're going to have to name all the islands as well. Let's see. Salaxadrum is right over here. This, we said we're going to call the bigger cities Men. So Menkesh Hadar. Menkesh Hadar. All right. There's the edge of our frame there. So there we go. Menkesh Hadar. Menkesh Hadar, and then here is another Sal u Afim. Sal u Afim. And I have to emphasize that it's not about ripping off a culture or a language. It's about drawing very strong inspiration from, and I think almost paying homage in a way to a language, going, well, this is a really cool sounding language and I want to use that in my space. I want to not honor it, but I appreciate it, and I think it has tremendous narrative power and value. So already, to me, you have Sal u Afim and Sal Aksa Drom. Those are the two smaller cities. Then you have Menkesh Hadar. To me, that really does sound slightly Persian-esque, but there's also an otherworldliness to it, which I quite like. And it certainly doesn't immediately remind me of elves, which is what I particularly like. It just makes it feel very different. Okay, this is another major area that has got lots of forest, so it's going to be a Men as well. So this is Menaheret. 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 Okay, and then up there is an Orcish city. I'm going to come back to the Orcish cities later on. Okay, so then down here, this is going to be a neutral city. So to make sure that it's very obviously not a city that's definitely Elvish or a city that's definitely Orcish, we've got to give it a name that stands out. And I think we could probably call this let's call it Hightown for lack of originality. let's call it Hightown. And that immediately, that instantly says this is neither that nor that. This is something totally different. So we've got Hightown, and then down here, I think, let's see, we've got our ice dwarves, we've got our humans, we've got the drop goblins, we've got the gypsies, we've got the shadow creatures. We don't really have a native race for the undersphere. So this little city here, I think, is going to be a cell. And I think it's going to be cell dross amen. And just move that to the right layer. Cell dross amen. And that will just be there. This will be another cell. Cell utat sheha. Orc. Down here. That could be another one of these crazy. So we got Hightown over there. Possibly we could call this we've got this is the solosphere. So what do we call this solace? As in, one can come here for solace, the sun. This is more of a religious location. We haven't really defined, apart from saying that it's just crazy to have that there, we haven't really gone much further than that in terms of saying what that temple is, so, or what that place is. So that's absolutely fine. Sal Wakim Na. Well, Sal Wakimna. Sal Yakim. No. I can live with that. Orc. All right. Yevdedi. Sal Yevdedi. Often I say these names out aloud to see if they do sound vaguely Persian. Not that I know what Persian sounds like, apart from sort of what I've seen in films and that sort of thing. All right, so now we've got the orcs. The orcs are these junkers, these crazy ones. I don't want them, and I've just, as I'm saying that, I've suddenly realised the reason why they seem to be so appropriate is that we get the orcs from 40k, Warhammer 40k, and they are junkers. They collect junk and they fly around in these junk space ships and drive these junk vehicles and things. I'm nervous to have the orcs do that, but I think they can be raiders and pirates without really affecting the mood too much. I don't want people to go, oh yeah, those are 40k orcs. So I have to make sure that they don't have that very orcish-like accent, which is so typical of the 40k universe, you know what I'm saying? So we're going to have to avoid that at all costs, and to do that, I think, would be to change the language. So the goblins are drop goblins, but they're not really pirates. I think if we let the orcs be the pirates, I think we'll be okay. I think we'll be all right. Okay, so then we're going to call this Butte. Ain't she a beaut? Ah, my hearty, she be a beauty, she be. She be a beaut. It's a Bondi with us. No, the word's not Bondi, it's Bonny. Well, the city's called Bondi now. You've got to be absolutely cankers. Cankers? What's a canker? That's the thing on the side of the ship that you hit the idiot with. Oh, you mean a what? No, I don't. All right. Cankers, Butte, Bondi. Let's say Reddo. Because painting your ship red makes it go faster. You see, I'm just channeling 40k. I can't get away from it. I'm going to have to try harder. I really am. All right, Reddo, and then we've still got there. It's just called Rock because it's next to a bunch of rocks. Right? That makes sense if you're an orc. And that's the capital, I think. Is it? No, the orcs would have invaded that Selyev quite a long time ago. Selyev Dedi would have been destroyed. So Reddo, I think, or Cankers is probably the capital. So you are... we're going to call you Shifter. Shifter, because it shifts around a lot, right? Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Now, these little tents and things, I'm going to leave them. I'm not going to name them now, because if I look at the map, we've got quite a lot of names on this map already. I just want to make sure we've hit all the structures. And I think we have. Okay, great. So then I just need to slap down Solisphere. There we go. And I think that's it. I'm not going to put in things like scale because we've got fast transportation around the planet. We've got things that fly very quickly. We're worried about vertical travel times rather than horizontal travel times, moving from Butte to Reddo. If I know that I've got one adventure to get from Butte to Reddo in, then it doesn't matter how far it is, does it? The characters are going to get there from one side, one way or another, and they will get there in one adventure. So I'm not going to put a scale on it. If players say, "Oh, you know, how big is this world?" Well, it's probably about the size of our moon. It's not huge at all. So that's what it is. Naming the islands, naming the lands, naming the territories. I don't think people would refer to continents. I don't think they'd have names like Europe or Asia, because today it's over there, but tomorrow it's drifted 100 nautical miles to the north. So that's not going to work out. You need to refer to locations that you can move to. So, well, you need to go to Menkesh Hadar, or it's actually at Sel Aqsa Drum, where the temple is that you need to go to. So I think that's how they would work it. I don't think they'd actually call it specific names and things. At least that's again, and that's in my humble opinion. So there we are. All right, so that's that map done. I'm going to do exactly the same for the next two, and then I'm going to take it over to World Anvil, and that's a different video altogether. I hope you have had some interest or some value in this. Again, just to sort of see the process it goes through, that it is not a planned process. I don't think any designer really sits down and goes, right, I know exactly what I'm doing. I think they evolve. So I think that's something that people need to realize, is that, yes, things evolve, things change, things adapt as you work. We're very visual creatures, humans, so we look for a balance, we look for a weighting, we look for stuff that just looks nice, and we don't necessarily know what that is straight off the bat. So don't be afraid to experiment and try and test out and come to solutions that work for you as you discover them, rather than trying to be fixed to a specific outcome. Anyway, until next time, thank you for watching. Hit the like button if you like this sort of stuff. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of this stuff. And until then, happy gaming.